So last year I went to South Korea. So South Korea had always been on my bucket list. But obviously you've got the threat of North Korea. They're just very close to the border there. I took a bit of a risk going there, but it was okay. But one thing I have to tell you, Hersh, I did actually notice the tension in South Korea. The South Koreans as a people are very lovely, very welcoming, but I could sense that tension. They're always on edge because they've got that risk of North Korea.
Martians landed.
Yes.
Wearing Prada suits.
Yes.
Drinking Henry Seltzer.
Yes.
Chewing juicy fruit.
Yes, and?
Your branding here.
Yes, brand.
Your message here.
Yes, and?
A verse about
Yes.
your product here.
Yes.
I'm Hersh Redmond.
Yes, and?
I'm a message therapist.
Yes.
And I have a podcast.
Yes, brand.
That's right, that's it.
Yes.
We'll help you fix the world.
Yes.
Or your bottom line.
All right.
Your bottom line.
Get it. I get it. Welcome to the Yes Brand Podcast.
In the hot seat today on Yes Brand is Linda King. Linda is an author, a travel blogger, former travel agent and banker. And speaking of banker, she has a wealth of experience when it comes to travel and money management. So the Smart Travelista brand is about traveling and saving money, but lest you get the wrong impression, it's not always about traveling not in style. You know, you can travel in style and still save money. Linda's written 10 books, 7 in the Smart Travelista series and 3 on the Antics from Abroad series. So welcome to Yes Brand, Linda.
Thank you, Hersh. Thanks for having me.
It's wonderful to have you. So start by telling me a little bit about why you love travel so much. What is the magic for you when it comes to travel?
So travel's been my life. I started traveling as a little girl and pretty much traveled ever since. The magic of travel is the unexpected. I think the freedom, the education, the life education that you get from it, especially if you do solo travel. And I think it gives you a more grounded opinion and view of the world. So sometimes when we're in our own country, we can be a little bit insular and we, understand what the life's like in our own little part of the world. But by traveling, it really opens up your perspective. You understand and you learn about other cultures. And I think it really enhances you as a human being. I think you're a better human being for it.
Yeah, well said. I think for sure that, while a lot of the travel that I've done has been for work, I've always managed to work in some time where it's just me or just us, whoever the group is that's going. I have a business with very close friends of mine, and we were always sure to tack on, if it was a trip to Asia or something, tack on an extra week and not always planned, just kind of travel, bounce around and see what it could do for our souls, So the Smart Travelista series, tell me where the books started.
So the book started, I was actually traveling through the Middle East pre-COVID, and I started getting a real lot of questions from other travelers. They were wondering how I was saving so much money on travel, but still, having quality in my travel plans. And I thought to myself, this is happening very regularly. And one lady actually said to me, have you got a blog? Have you got a website? She goes, because I would follow you because you've got some really good information here. And then I thought to myself, well, for me, this is just like common sense because I've lived it for, as when I was in the career that I was in travel. But then I realized not a lot of other people knew this stuff. So I thought, you know what, it's about getting a website, getting a blog, so I can then share it with everyone. Because for me, the Smart Travelista's mission is that we all travel a lot, but in quality without the cost. So I think it's a really good vehicle that people can go to the blog, they can also go to the website, and they can learn those tips. They can then, incorporate that into their own travel and travel more. because that's the mission, really, to be a smart travelista. If you're a smart travelista, you are using the smart tips that are going to save you money. And, obviously that also incorporates safety as well as, being healthy. So the holistic view of it is that you're healthy, safe, and that you're saving money.
And that you're getting to do it in a way that's enjoyable and fulfilling. What are
Mm.
a couple of tips that you can share today?
So if we're talking money saving, I
Sure.
think book online yourself if you can manage that. Don't go to a travel agent. The travel agents aren't going to like me here, but they actually charge commission within their pricing because obviously they're doing work for you, to plan your itinerary. If you can learn and do the online travel yourself, you're going direct to the travel companies and you're actually going to get a cost saving before you even start. Also, what I would say is research. I know research, some people find that it's time consuming. It's actually the best thing that you can do before you travel because it's actually going to give you insights into cost, into, currency exchange and all that sort of thing. While you're traveling, I would say try and walk everywhere because that's actually a healthy thing to do. And obviously, if everything's close by, you're going to save money on transport. Also, what I would say, don't eat out every day. So, don't eat out lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner because that eats into your budget. So, I always go to supermarkets and see if I can save on money. It's a lot healthier as well. And that's a good cost saving. Another great one that I think maybe some people do, but not everyone, go on free walking tours. And it goes back to your research. Before you go, find out if there's a free walking tour in that destination, because you're going to get a really cost-effective tour with a local that knows their stuff. You can ask them a lot of questions about your destination, and you've got information there that you can then use further on in your trip. And at the end of it, you just give a donation. So if you use some of these things, some of these tips, you're actually going to save quite a bit of money in your
Oh,
travel.
those are great. Those are great trips tips. What about safety? What about some tips for maintaining personal safety?
Safety, be really self-aware. So, if you're traveling in a group, might be a little bit different, but if you're a solo traveler, be really self-aware. What's happening around you? I think we do this anyway as in our everyday life, but we just need to ramp it up a little bit more because the country you're going to, you don't know. You might not have traveled there before. You're not really sure about crime, or if you've done your research, you know about the crime levels, but it's just about being really self-aware. Again, this is probably common sense, but if you're going to withdraw money from an ATM, don't do it in a secluded area because you're a real target for someone potentially robbing you. And again, don't put your backpack on your back, put it on your front so you know what's going on. And that goes for guys as well. If you've got your wallet in your back pocket, don't do it because you don't know what someone's doing behind the back of you. So it's about if you've got a backpack, try not to have a big backpack, have a smaller backpack and have it at the front of you. I've done that always, and you can actually see what's going on. You've got to be really, really aware, especially with your belongings, because they are your key to traveling, right? Your passport, your
Yeah.
money. So you've got to keep them really safe.
Yeah, and I think that one of the mistakes that we make, and you tell me, is that we feel somehow. I used to feel this way in New York. I had lived in New York for many years. I used to feel like, in a way, the fact that it's so populous, that it's so crowded, made me feel a little more anonymous, perhaps a little more safe. Who's going to bother me? I'm just moving through big crowds. But big crowds can be kind of treacherous as well, I think, when it comes to pickpocketing, getting robbed, things like that. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on the crowd. So if you're in a country and you can see women and children there, that's probably going to be a little bit safer. If you're seeing the crowd and it's a different demographic, again, it's about being self-aware. If something doesn't look right, get out of there quick.
Yeah.
I've been in situations where I've seen something that wasn't right and it's potentially dangerous, and I've just got out of there quickly. So again, I think if there's one big tip, Hersh, it's about being self-aware. So when I say self-aware, understand what's around you, understand what's going on around you, who are the people around you, and being really observant about your location. So it's not about being stressed the whole time. It's just being really aware of what your location is, if it's at night time or it's in the daytime. If it's secluded, I think that's a no-brainer. It's probably not a good place to be, day
Yeah.
or night. So yeah, but I mean, again, a lot of this is common sense. I think people do this anyway, but it's just always really good to be reminded about this when you travel.
Yeah, that makes total sense. What about, there's so much to see, so much to do in the world. Are there places that you've been to that you do like returning to, that you like keep coming back because you really get so much out of them?
I would have to say probably the US and Europe. Being an Australian, as everyone can hear my accent, I'm from Australia. We're so far away. So if I've got to go to, say, Canada or the US, it's 24 hours for me to get there, depending on where I'm going. And the same goes with London or Europe. So those places, I really make a really good trip. And I think they're both very diverse. Europe, there's so many countries in Europe. You can go to Northern Europe, you can go to Southern Europe, you can go to Eastern, Western Europe. I like the countries where there's a lot of diversity. And the same would go for, say, Asia as well. Asia's a bit closer for me being in Australia, but yeah, there's so many continents in the world with such diverse countries that are in close proximity to each other. I just think we're really lucky and really blessed that we can travel to all these places in the world and see something different each time. But I think probably the most common places that I would go to, probably for location, would be Asia. But then if I'm going further afield, it would be Europe and the US.
Yeah, now when we spoke back in October, I think you were about to go to the US and Canada, right? What was that trip like?
Oh, it's fantastic. Arrived in Toronto and then went up to Niagara Falls, got the train up to Montreal, and then also visited Quebec City, and then came back to Toronto and then went over to Miami for a few days before came back to Australia. So yeah, it was fabulous. I had a really good cross section of weather. So in Canada, it was starting to get a bit chillier. So under
Yeah,
about 10 degrees centigrade. And then in Miami, it was a balmy 29 degrees and quite
Celsius.
humid. Celsius,
Yeah.
yeah, not Fahrenheit. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's very, very humid,
Well,
but nice.
let's shift gears a little bit and talk about travel to, now the climate, not the weather, but the political climate in a lot of countries seems to shift quite a bit. There's a lot of uncertainty. Are there tips that you have for traveling to places that have, that there might be an element of danger for certain people to travel to certain places?
Yeah, my big tip would be to go on your consular website or something similar that you might
Yeah.
have. So we've got a website in Australia, and what it does, it gives alert levels. So it gives do not travel, and then so that'd be probably a level 5, do not travel, but you'll have level 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it'll just tell you the risks. So I would look at these websites also for your health, for the health, reasons as well as the security. So last year I went to South Korea. So South Korea had always been on my bucket list. But obviously you've got the threat of North Korea. They're just very close to the border there. I took a bit of a risk going there, but it was okay. But one thing I have to tell you, Hersh, I did actually notice the tension in South Korea. The South Koreans as a people are very lovely, very welcoming, but I could sense that tension. They're always on edge because they've got that risk of North Korea. So I think you've really got to play it by ear when you go to these countries and be, again, really aware of. So while I was over there, at 4 o'clock every day, they would have a warning, a daily warning to be safe. But I think, you know what, sometimes your want to go there sometimes overrides the risk. So I knew there was a little bit of risk with South Korea. I came out of it okay because I'm talking to you now. But I think you've got to be sensible about the countries. So, For instance, if you wanted to go to, say, Israel or Lebanon, I think you'd probably, at the moment, you might want to give that a no at the moment. But, it's up to the individual and up to their level of travel expertise, I suppose. But what I would say is if you're going to those countries, and I would say this to anybody, that you should have travel insurance. It's a no-brainer for me that no matter where you're going, you should have travel insurance. If you've got the money to travel, you should have travel insurance. It's a mandatory item, in my opinion, and that will protect you to some respect if you get into trouble. But again, try not to go into these countries if you can manage it, because I think your family want to see you come back. You've left them in one piece, you want to come back in one piece.
Yeah. Well, it's similar to, to any kind of adventure that someone might go on, mountain climbing,
Mm,
kayaking, river rafting. It doesn't really matter.
mm,
The idea is if your level of expertise is at a certain place, keep that in mind. And like you say, check with the consulate. When I was traveling quite a bit, for work and going to different countries. I registered with the State Department, which would
mm.
advise, they would advise me regardless of where I was going, so wherever I was going, I was connected to them. The other thing is that I like to talk about on the show is now the Smart Travelista, what's next for you in terms of that as a brand, as something you're building? Where do you see that going?
So at the moment, I've got a full-time job. So the Smart Travelist is a side hustle. So whatever spare time I've got, I work on that. So in the future, down the track, I think what I'm doing at the moment is building the foundations. Started building the foundations in COVID. So I thought that was a really good time when we had, no, we couldn't travel, obviously. I did a lot of work to build the business and brand. And it's just about gradually growing that to a point where I can get some really good passive income from it later on. And, so I'm getting a certain amount of income from it, but I want to build that. So it's about getting the exposure, promoting the brand. I mean, going on podcasts like your fabulous one, Hersh, is one good way to get the word out there. But it's just little by little working on things that I think that are going to be return on investment for the business. So I've always got a list of about 100 things to do with only limited time to do them. So I look at what I've got on the list and go, okay, what's going to be the best return on investment? And then I choose those, or the most critical things, obviously. So if the website needs updating, that's probably an urgent thing to do as well. But it's just about having a list and prioritizing what you think needs to be done. Eventually, I won't be working full time and I'll have that time to actually really focus more into the brand, as well as doing some other things like traveling more extensively. So it's just about, taking the baby steps now to really consolidate and make it something really established later on.
And where are the profit centers for this business model?
So the profit centers, I get affiliate income from the blogs. I also get some money from the book sales, and any other things that I get involved in where there's, money is sort of paid over for. So, but mainly the affiliates and the writing is where the most money's coming from at the moment.
Yeah, and are there other books in the works?
Yeah, so I've got 10 books working. I try and bring out at least 2 books a year. I think that's manageable working
Yeah.
full time. So what I try and do, I take advantage of the NaNoWriMo every November and try and do a lot of writing in November. And then it's just about, and also while I was over in Canada. So sometimes I get the opportunity, if I was on the train for quite a few hours and did a lot of writing then. So any opportunity that I've got where I've got a few hours, or if I'm on a plane, perfect opportunity if I'm going somewhere long haul to do some really big amount of writing. So I slot in the writing where I can and then try and so far so good. I've been bringing out at least 2 books a year. I think anything more than that would be a real struggle. But yeah, but I'm going to continue that on and into the near future and build the amount of books that I've got.
That sounds great. Let's kind of come full circle with maybe you've given some great tips, and you will include all your information in the show notes and stuff. But what are a couple of places that you have to date never been that are on your list?
Yes, South America. Never been to South America, so I would love to go there because there's a real lot of countries there that I find so fascinating. I've did a lot of South Pacific over the last 12 months, and I would really love to finish up the South Pacific Triangle, which would be Easter Island off the edge of Chile. So I've pretty much been to everywhere else in the triangle. So, but there's so many other places. I think a lot of the places that I would have loved to have gone to are now a sort of no-go zone. So sort of like Russia, and
Mm.
always been fascinated by Russia, but I think I better steer clear of that for the time being. But yeah, I've got so many places on my bucket list, but never enough time to go to all of them. So Africa is another place that I definitely want to go to and haven't had the chance to. But yeah, I've got probably a bucket list as long as a roll of paper toweling. And it
So
goes
there,
on and
so
on and
there's
on and
more.
on.
So there's always more. There's always more places to see and more to learn. How obviously the further the trip is for you, based on
Mm,
living in Australia, the longer probably the trip. But
mm.
have you ever thought about places that you've been to where you're like, yeah, I might want to live there. I might want to move.
Yeah, you know what? There's been places that I've seen, and for an Australian, a lot of people go to Asia and live over there because it's really, really cheap. I wouldn't want to live anywhere but Australia, to be
Oh.
honest with you. I've lived here my whole life, and that's the beauty of travel, Hirsch. You get to see so many fascinating places, and I think it makes you very grateful for the place that you live in. Sometimes you can complain about where you live and, oh, the costs are too high. Yeah, the costs are too high, but I think it's a wonderful place. I've traveled the world and I will continue to travel the world, but I think at the moment Australia is sort of where I would live. But, depends on what happens in the world, right? Something might happen and things might change. I think if I had to live somewhere else, Canada looks like a really nice place. Canada is very similar to Australia in a lot of respects. I'd heard from other people about that and I saw it for myself when I just went there. I maybe consider that. I've also got distant relatives that live there. But no, I think Australia would be where I would live when I retire.
Alright.
If you liked the show,
Yes, and?
it worked for you,
Yes, then?
subscribe and leave a
Yes, friend.
5-star review.
Yes, friend.
Tell all your friends.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Get your branding here.
Yes, friend.
Did I make it clear?
Yes, friend.
Get your branding on
Yes.
before they're gone.